Dun, dun, dun. Hello, and welcome to Transform Your Relationships Live. I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the amazing and awesome Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hi, Rhoberta.
Hello, Laura. We've had a little break, folks. We're missing our show from 2 weeks ago, so we're happy to be back with you.
Yep, after some travels and some just summer getting back to school type of thing, back to the family. We have a hot topic today because when you're dealing with emotional people, emotional times, emotional situations, sometimes we take emotional hits from people who like do what we've talked about here before, and you've been quoted saying, Roberta, when you blurt, you hurt.
That's
So
right.
what if you're the one being hurt by the blurter?
Well, it's such an important thing, because sometimes we're in a relationship where we trust, we're open to the potential that this is going to be a trusting, safe relationship. And then so we're there all open and something comes under our radar and we take a real body hit, and it gets us in our body. We may be stumbling over the words, but we take the hit. And it's important to know what happens and what we can do about that when it happens.
And to
Because
honor it, like
mhm,
that we are human, we're not robots, we don't have to um, and we don't have to be the aggress back either.
well, that's true. And sometimes we just can't respond in the moment because we don't get the impact of what happened to us. So we may be a little discombobulated. In actual fact, there's science for this, which is when something happens to us that is like completely out of what we were expecting in the moment, it creates a cognitive dissonance. And when that happens, it disinhibits our neocortex for a couple of minutes, or few seconds, and we're disoriented. Like, where did that come from? Like, that was nowhere near the flow I was expecting. And so our brain goes, how do I make sense of this? And in that time, then we respond, or we sit in stunned silence, and we don't really get what's happened. And then we kick in, and we may be a little inane, or we may actually allow people to continue to do it until we regroup. And I really think an important part of this conversation today, Laura, is after you've regrouped, what do you do? Because
Hmm.
you have to come back and recognize what's important about living your values and what's important to communicate in this situation.
And what does regrouping look like in the first place?
Well, actually admitting, like, whoa, I took a hit.
Hmm.
Don't downplay it. Don't say, oh, I shouldn't have, they didn't mean it, pat it all out like that. Is like, what is this emotional hit I took? Where was it? How did I take it in? What did the other person say? What was the trigger? What actually is my physical response, and what is my emotional response, and what is my mental response to it now that I sit with it? Because what'll happen, I mean, haven't you ever had that thing where you talk to somebody that you really like and all of a sudden you make some offhanded comment and you think, where did that come from? And then you realize that a driver cut you off an hour ago and you're still angry.
Yep.
So
And you're releasing, frustrations from somewhere else onto somebody else who's an innocent that does not deserve it. And boom. And nobody deserves it, right? It's like
exactly.
if we have stuff pent up, it is not okay to let it out on other people, to take it out, to vent. I mean, to vent is okay, but to take it out on somebody like whatever's going on here is their problem, is they caused it.
Yeah, and even venting, it is, you have to be careful where you vent, because
Yes.
some people take it personally, and that's their problem, of course, but then you can destroy another relationship or at least cause it some pain. And you want to be more aware than that. You want to be more self reflective and self responsible, and also self directive. Like, no, I don't want to be doing that. I want to be clearer than that.
I'm smiling because I just pulled out of my drawer a feminine power card, and it's exactly what you just talked about. Responsibility and responding. Responding requires connecting to one's feelings, sharing the truth without harming anyone. And it could be just sharing the truth with yourself. I did a little journal writing. I have chosen a venting partner that, I let them know I'm just venting, and whatever I'm venting about has nothing to do with them, right? So sometimes we just need to vent. And
Yeah, we do. I mean, and a really great place to vent is in your journal or into a tape recorder and, just get it all out. Go stomping around the house, put on great tribal music and dance your heart out or scream or do whatever you need to do. And
right.
then come back and say, let me put my rational self back together here and say, what would I like to do about this? But you've got to get it out of your body because it will cause you unrest.
Hmm.
And so the first thing is to deal with yourself.
And taking a bath, nurturing yourself. Sometimes I need a lot of nurturing. I need to ask for hugs. If I've taken a hit, man, I need to cry it out. I need to journal it out. I need to, I honor the fact that, yeah, I think I'm a little more sensitive than I'd like to admit sometimes. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, there's a whole flip side, a positive side to being sensitive, because I know where people are coming from a lot of the times. I can dodge some things sometimes, but other times when things are direct hits, even if it wasn't meant to hurt you, that
Yeah.
it hurt. It's just like you got hurt. And there's that taking responsibility. You don't want to just lash it back out. Like if you're going through something and it just becomes ping pong and of hurt, hurt, and then everybody collapses. It's like not a good thing.
No, and I'm going to bring up the personal weather report because that's what it is you need to do.
Mm.
But having the presence of mind to do it in the moment, that's tough. That takes a lot of practice. Hopefully we'll all get there. But once you realize you've had a hit and you have to come back to the conversation, then the best way to do that is actually to come with a personal weather report. So you're only speaking about yourself. And so you're not blaming or shaming anybody else. You're not blurting and hurting. You're actually endeavoring to deepen the relationship and the understanding in the relationship and share something about yourself with another human.
Mm.
And when we've been deeply hurt or cut off at the knees or wounded or taken a body hit, the natural thing to do is to want to hit back. And we want to be different than that. I was going to say better than that, but I don't think it's a value judgment. I think it's just like, okay, that's a natural thing. How dare you talk to me like that? Like, well, then who do we want to be? So many times people say to me they've been with a hijackal, or maybe they have a hijackal parent. Here's a good example. And they'll say, I had one the other day, yesterday, and this fellow said, well, my mother's 79 years old and she's a hijackal. I've read all of your work and I realize what's going on, but she's 79. What do I do? And my answer was, who are you?
Mm.
Right? It's not about a should, it's not about a formula. Who are you? Are you a person who knows that you deserve to be treated well? Are you a person who will keep yourself safe? Are you a person who has love to give and without any concern for taking on your mother's vitriol? Who are you? I don't know. There's no right answer. But you have to figure out who you are so that you can choose a course of action that will have you living without regret. And you have to be so clear about that because all the shoulds want to crowd in at that moment, all the cultural shoulds and
And the
training.
family dynamics and
Yeah,
the
yeah. And
expectations and how you've behaved in the past and how can you do this newly, and shift it up, and the risk you take in doing it, and
yeah.
shifting everybody out of the pattern,
And
right?
I said to him, old doesn't make her kinder. You know, the fact that she's 79 doesn't make her all of a sudden a good person. It doesn't make her a kind person. It doesn't make her someone you want to be around. But if you want to do some caretaking or you want to feel that, he said, well, how can I heal this and find forgiveness? I said, that's something you find within yourself for yourself. All you're trying to do is get your mother to stop having real estate in your head. You'll forgive her. But don't go and hope that you're going to have a heart to heart and she's going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I've been this way your whole life. She's not going to do that. She's going to say, how dare you talk to me like that? Why are you always accusing me of something? And then she'll pull the other card. Well, I'm 79 years old. Yeah, well, now I have to decide who I am and what I do. And that's the case with every situation that we're in. Who are you? What is your value system? What are your beliefs? How do you live from them and demonstrate them in the interactions that you have? So when you get sideswiped by somebody's remark or caught off guard or something gets under your radar, the best thing to do is to be fairly benign and quiet, figure it out, and then come back with your response that's considered.
It's amazing. I was thinking yesterday that my response to someone when I'm totally clear of having a reaction to something is completely different than when I'm in the reaction, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, so this didn't work and I need this. If you have this happen, let me know, or let me know what you need, but don't take your frustration out of me. It's just not fair, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's the distinction between reacting and responding.
Mm,
When you've taken a breath and you've had a thought or two in the quiet, you can respond. But in the moment, it's fight or flight or faint or freeze often because you're in a heightened sense of awareness, you're caught off guard, and you feel ambushed. And so therefore you go into action. And
yeah.
so the first step is to learn to go, whoa, what was that? As opposed to, all right, and you know,
I'm
it's
ambushed. I'm going
on,
to suck them back, right?
it's on,
How dare you talk to me that way, right?
That's right, so it takes a lot of practice to be able to be in the moment when you feel like somebody's sideswiped you. And sometimes it takes a while for you to realize you've been sideswiped. You may be there and in the conversation with genuine concern and all, and you keep going in that. And after a while, you go, oh, that feels like it went terribly sideways. What's this? And then it's revealed to you when you stop and think about it. No, that wasn't okay with me. And then you can respond. And
Yeah.
you can respond with a personal weather report that says, this is what I think, feel, need, and want. And then ask, oh, good for you. You can ask, can this happen? Are you willing to join me in doing this differently? And if the person says no and they make it your fault, then you say, well, let's put a little time and space between us then, and let's just go and consider the possibilities of what we just discussed. You don't have to solve everything in the moment. You can go away and do it later.
Sometimes I feel like I just need to do this part with the person.
Yeah, whatever parts you need to do. I mean, there are four options. You can't do them all often, but you know, you
Yeah,
can.
I think that, sometimes if I reveal, I feel so blah, 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 whatever, hurt by this, that I'm actually making myself a little more vulnerable, especially if they're of the persuasion of someone who takes advantage of your vulnerabilities, like a hijackal.
Yeah.
But I can certainly say, this is what I need. This is what I want. If that doesn't
Hmm.
work for you, okay, we don't have to have a relationship.
Yeah, and
You know.
in the sense of sending a whole message, you might start by saying what you need and want, but you may back it up by saying what you think and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when you say what you need and want, it's not whole enough. There wasn't enough introduction to it for the other person to respond well. Then they see you as demanding.
Mm.
And so if you say, well, I've been thinking about this for a while, excuse me, and I realized that I had some pain around it, and I realized that I need and want this.
Yes.
Then you have a sense instead of going to someone and saying, well, here's what I need. Will you give it to me?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to say there
No,
wouldn't
I'm
be
sure
any
you
other
didn't,
other
but
conversation, but I might be not be so revealing about the feelings, but I would give, a little background even on like I received this message and I'd like to receive it differently, like it doesn't really work for me that way or so but I love the fact that the personal weather report is about this person who's saying what I need, what I feel, what I want. It's not about, well, when you did this, I felt this. And it
Yeah, I
seems
know.
like it's the same thing to someone who's never tried this process before, but it's completely different because it takes the responsibility here and it keeps it here.
Exactly.
And is there responsibility over there? Yes, but I'm not responsible for their responsibility. I can only control what I feel and what I need and what I want and make that
Yeah.
request.
And and also you're the only one who knows what you think, feel, need, and want, and you can't make assumptions about what the other person thinks, feel, needs, and wants.
Right.
So when you go first and you say that, you might say, well, what do you need? Or, what's your ultimate goal in this situation? Or what outcome would you like? And so you begin to get a dialogue that is straight across. There's reciprocity and mutuality in it. And you know how many times I've said on this show that a healthy relationship has equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. So when we're trying to solve a problem with somebody, we want to have those three things in it. And these are important components when you move from the personal weather report, which I talk about in my book, Kaizen for Couples. And yeah, that book has got couples in the title, but it's any relationship anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it allows you to feel so much better about the way you communicate and so much more aware of who you are and how you are and what you want. And we tend not to have that level of understanding of ourselves until we engage in something like that, because we're running as fast as we can, and oftentimes we're there to live up to the expectations and pleasures of others, and we want them to like us. And if we get caught in that, then we're becoming a pretzel for somebody else to pat us on the head. And if we had a parent who withheld approval, then we're going to run around looking for approval from everybody else. And we got to come clean with that and recognize that in ourselves, that that gift wasn't given to us. We weren't approved of. A hijackal parent will never approve of you. They will withhold approval and affection. And so if you've had that withheld from you, you're a little hungry, and you may look for it in places that are wrong. I think I've said this before, that one of the big moments in my life was after my mother passed, and I was going through a process with her photographs. And after it was done, kind of had a big think about it. And at the time, I had a big yoga retreat, and I was sitting on the yoga retreat floor in this big expanse of space with lots of light flying in. And I realized, what was I really waiting for from this woman? I was waiting for her approval. But when I really thought about it, Laura, she was a nasty, mean, judgmental, racist, critical human being. And I was waiting for the approval of someone of whom I didn't approve. Now,
Mm,
how crazy is that?
crazy.
But until you realize that you may be doing that, you can't wake up to it. You wake up when you do wake up. And when you realize that a hijackal makes it a life work to withhold approval and love from you, then it is not about you. You could have stood on your head and spit wooden nickels for a millennium, and they would not have given you the love and approval that you wanted. I nursed my mom to her death, and 3 days before she died, I said to her, Mom, you've never told me you loved me. And she said, I know. I mean, it's recalcitrant. There is none of it. You would like to think that on her deathbed, she would want to do something. She's a hijackal. No, she wanted control and power till the end, right? So understand that when people hit you emotionally, verbally, whatever way that they hit you, it's about them, not about you. But your opportunity is to reflect and say, how do I respond to that? And is it worth responding? Or is it worth engaging in the relationship, or let it drift away? Or do I care enough about the relationship to endeavor to get some mutuality and talk about how that went down and how it could be better? All of these are big decisions.
I think the clarity for me comes with knowing what I want. Getting when the process of the recovery is like, well, what do I want out of this situation? Well, first of all, I know how I want to be treated in the future, right? Um, And or do I not want a future even with this
Yeah.
person? So becoming really clear, because being able to give the personal weather report is not just about sharing feelings. It's about really being clear on the direction you want to take it. And I really feel strongly about the recovery process, because and then the setting of boundaries we've talked about before, or requesting something, because we are teaching people who have a tendency to lash out. And that's probably a lot of people. It's a big percentage. They're not all hijackals, but people
No.
lash out, right? And
Mhm.
we are teaching people that lashing out doesn't fly, it doesn't work, it destroys relationships, it hurts people. The blaming and the shaming is no longer acceptable. And when we model it through the personal weather report of what is a healthy way to express feelings and or requests for how we want things to go down, we are teaching, in a sense, we're spreading that healthier response. And it becomes like something that if we can take it on, it just kind of mushrooms out, that positive, healthy
Mhm.
way of dealing with situations, because we're all going to have these feelings that we don't like. We all might lash out by accident, or because we just hadn't processed enough. And we can take it on and take responsibility and start making that our culture. So I feel really strongly, because I want to shift the culture around this in our
Yeah.
world, and I know you do too.
I do too. And we also have to acknowledge that in a more entitled population, that we've seen a fair number of entitled people popping up, that they believe that they, can let it all hang out. I mean, in the 70s, that was what people talked about, like, just talk, let your feelings out, just be real in the moment. But no, you can be real in the moment, but let's have a way to do it that promotes relationship rather than denigrates relationship.
Amen.
Yeah, because you don't have the right to stand up, step all over my parade, you know, and I'm willing to step up and say, hey, back off, don't be doing that, and have a way to say it that is non-confrontational. Just, like you said, well, that doesn't work for me. But I think there's also a problem in that doesn't work for me, because the other person, when they're in a heightened state and their brain is not functioning really well, they say, well, it's not all about you, right? So we have to be understanding of the dynamic that's actually going on, because when we realize, I was working with a client the other day. I think I have a little piece of paper here with a diagram on it. When we realize that when we get into upset, when we get into emotionally heightened state, we begin to lose brain power.
Mm,
When the body feels threatened in any way, the body wants to take care of itself. So the more threatened it becomes, the more angry you become, the more emotionally upset you become, the more aroused the body is, the more fear the body feels it's not going to survive. So it takes the blood from the extremities, and in particular, the extremity called the head.
the front of the head.
Yeah, and the parietal and prefrontal lobes, particularly, and those are centers of perception and logic and reason and linear rational thought. And so, like, as Ashley Brilliant said, when you're angry, you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret. So, you get yourself into a heightened sense and then you let fly. There's probably going to be a lot of backpedaling and mending to do after you do that. So it's really wise for any of us to do our own work, to really spend time figuring out, who am I? What do I want to live for? What does this look like in communication, in relationship, in the way that I manage my conversations and conflict? And to practice that, living from that, and not be afraid to paint a mistake red and say, wow, that came out in a really unkind way, and I do not appreciate myself doing that. Can I have a rerun here? Here's what I would prefer I had said. And when you get to that place where you can give it a name right in the minute and go, whoa, that was bad, okay, then you can solve a problem. But when you let it go in and fester for a while, and the other person, becomes more difficult to heal. So, let's start by being aware enough to say, take responsibility for those bullets that just came out of our mouths, and try and solve the problem right in the minute.
And ideally, verbally, not on in an email,
Or not on social media.
and definitely not social media. Especially the negative stuff needs to stay off of the written because it's taken completely differently by different people. So
Yeah,
take
so
good
much.
care. My takeaways is take really good care of myself, recover, get
Mhm.
clear on what it is I'm feeling and I'm needing and wanting and need to request and communicate, um, and do it and do it and start modeling it so we can change our culture, so we can create a world that works of people who can actually communicate to each other, number one, and honor each other in the process.
Yeah. And what a great contribution to the world that we can make by doing our own work and being in integrity with our values and the way that we want to come across in the world and the way we want to accomplish our relationships getting deeper and richer. And we have to take responsibility for that. It starts with us, it doesn't start with the other person.
Yeah. And I feel like that Jackson song, change, be the change you want to see. Take a look in the mirror and
Yeah,
change.
exactly. Exactly. And we all can. And don't take on too much at a time. Fix some little thing and then
Little
move
baby
on to some other little thing. I call those TTGCs, teeny tiny doable chunks.
There you go. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a great place to complete today's episode of our Transform Your Relationship live show. We will be back again in a couple of weeks.
We will. And you can find Laura at transformtoday.com, and you can find me at forrelationshiphelp.com. We're always here for you. And if you have questions and comments, put them down below the video. We go in there and we respond to them. And we're happy to have you engage with us in that conversation. And let's keep it going.
Yes. Love you all. Bye for now.
Bye bye.